Algebra 1 lesson. Algebra 1. We're going to do section 7.4 today. And let's see, I'm a little too zoomed in. Zoom out a bit. Okay, so you need to take notes. Everything that I cover. So this is solving polynomials in factored form. Okay, so you need to write your name on the page, date, period. Okay. Now, solving polynomials in factored form. We've been doing a lot of stuff with polynomials last couple sections, adding them, subtracting them, multiplying them. And now we're going to kind of, sort of undo some of the work. But we're going to use something called the zero product property. Okay, zero product property. And what the zero product property says is that if the product, okay, a product is when you multiply two things together, the product of two real numbers is zero. So if two numbers multiply together and the answer is zero, then at least one of the numbers is zero. And I feel like this totally makes sense, hopefully, to you guys. If you multiply two things together and somehow you get zero, didn't one of them have to be zero? Zero times anything is zero, right? But if it's like 1 times 2, there's no way you're going to get zero if one of them isn't zero. They could both be zero, right? But at least one of them is zero. So here's another way of writing it. A little more like, with variables. If A and B are real numbers and AB equals 0, that means A times B, then A equals 0 or B equals 0. They can both equal 0. But this is called the zero product property, and we're going to rely on this, I think, intuitive kind of common sense kind of thing, right? But we're gonna use this. This is the official name of it. All right. So let's do some examples with it. I'll show you how we're going to use it. So example 1, part A, 2x, x minus 4 equals 0. And we'll do another one. B, x minus 3, x minus 9 equals 0. Now, these are already in factored form. Okay? In factored form, to factor things is to kind of like unmultiplying. We've been multiplying to simplify. Factoring is kind of like undoing the multiplication or not multiplying them yet. So you know that this is this times this. So the idea that we're saying here is if you have two things, A times B, generically, and they equal 0, then one of them has to be 0. Or the other one can be 0. And so we're going to solve these. We're going to find the answers for x that make it true. Okay? So the way we're going to do that is we're going to say, well, 2x could be 0, or x minus 4 could be 0, right? This looks complicated, but really it's something times something else. It's a product of two things. And one of the things has to be 0. Then we're going to solve each of these. So we create two new equations. So x equals 0 is an answer. And this one we add 4 to both sides to get rid of the minus 4. And x equals 4 is an answer. There's two answers. You need to find both of them. Okay? These answers are called, sometimes they're called solutions. because you got them from solving an equation. They're called solutions. Sometimes they're called roots. Okay. Sometimes you might interpret them as x-intercepts of like a graph. So these are all different terms that might get thrown around using this process. Okay. Directions might say that. Okay. Now, by the way, entering these, say like on big ideas or something, you might just separate them by a comma. No parentheses around them. They're not like an XY coordinate pair, but usually you just list them. You could list them like this. You could, on your homework, I'm fine with putting them separate, but I'm just saying if you have to enter the answer in a single place, then this might be the way to do it. Okay, same thing here. X minus 3 equals 0. X minus 9 equals 0. And then you solve the very simple equations. Add 3, show your work. Add 9. And you get your two answers. So it's as easy as that when it's factored for you. So let's do a couple more examples. If you feel like, oh man, I'm getting this, then pause the video and try it yourself before I do it and see how you do. So we're going to do two examples, two more, parentheses 2x plus 7, parentheses 2x minus 7 equals 0. And then we'll do another one. Now this one's going to have x plus 1, x minus 3, x minus 2 equals 0. So this idea that it's two things multiplying each other, it doesn't have to just be two things. It could be any number of three things. So this one, 2x plus 7 equals 0, 2x minus 7 equals 0. And then we solve it. Now you got to get rid of addition and subtraction first, reverse PEMDAS, reverse order of operations. It's the best way to go. I guess I could just finish this one first. So then you divide both sides by 2. So the answer is x equals negative 7/2. This one is going to be, I'm going to divide both sides by 2. This is going to be x equals positive 7/2. So you get two different answers. Now, in general, you should expect to get as many answers as factors. So there's two factors. Well, then, two binomials, then you should get two answers. This one has three binomials, three binomial pairs. We should probably get three answers. Now, the only time where that might not happen is when you get the same answer twice, and we're not going to list it twice. But this is just like the other one. X plus 1 equals 0. X minus 3 equals 0. And x minus 2 equals 0. You need to do all of them. Minus 1, plus 3, plus 3, plus 2, plus 2. There you go. Okay. Now, we're going to make it a little tougher next. Okay. Those ones, I think those ones are pretty quick and easy. But what if they're not factored? Okay. So we're going to factor using the GCF. Now, the GCF stands for greatest, which means biggest, common, which means they both things have something in common, factor. Factor something you use to multiply to get something. Okay. So essentially, we need to answer the question, what happens when the equation is not in factored form? Okay. All those other ones, they were factored for you. So what do we do when it's not factored? Now, we're gonna just kind of slowly get into this, okay? So these ones, 12x cubed plus 3x squared. And then part B, it's me 4x to the fourth plus 24x cubed. Now these are not equations. Okay? They don't have an equals 0. So we can't solve these yet. Okay? It's got to be an equation. What we're going to do is we're going to just practice factoring. Okay? Now factoring, what we're trying to do is divide out. Factor is kind of another way of saying divide something out. We're trying to unmultiply these. Okay? So we're trying to kind of undo the work we've been in previous weeks. And the way we do it, the greatest common factor, this is one way. This is the only way we're going to focus on this week. It's the largest number and the largest variable that they have in common. Largest variable with power, like the largest power that they have in common that they share. Okay? Now, I'm going to show a little more work on these at first, but eventually we'll probably kind of do it in our head a lot. So what we could do is we could factor this out, right? The prime factorization. So 12, how do you get 12? You get 12, you could say, well, it's 2 times 6. Okay, but 6 is 2 times 3 times x times x times x. So this is called the prime factorization. If you break this down into all the smallest factors possible, this is what it looks like, right? And then this one over here is going to be 3 times x times x. That's prime factorization. We want to get what's common, what they share. Well, they both have a 3, right? They both have an x. They both have another x. That's what they share. That's the greatest common factor. So if we multiply back together, it's 3x squared, and we put it out in front. It's like we're dividing it, unmultiplying it, and putting it back out in front. Now, what goes in here is going to be whatever's left over. Okay? What's left over? Okay? There's a 2 and a 2 and an x, so that's 4x. Plus, there's nothing left over here. Yeah, but we got to put something. We got to put a 1. And then that's the answer. Now, we can't solve this one, but that's factoring the GCF. Now, the other way to think about what goes in here is to actually, what we're doing when we factor is we're dividing this out. And so you could say, well, what's 12x cubed divided by 3x squared? Well, 12 divided by 3 is 4. X cubed divided by x squared, rules of exponents say to subtract the 2 from the 3, and you have x to the first left over. 3x squared divided by 3x squared is not 0, it is 1. If you were to distribute this back in, you should get what you started with. If you do that, like in your head or whatever, and you don't, then something's wrong. Okay? So that's it for that one. We're just factoring on these. We're not going to solve them. Okay? Can't solve them yet. Okay, now this one. We could do this every time. We're eventually going to stop writing all this down, but I think at first it should help you. So 4 is 2 times x times x times x times x, right? And then this one, how do you get 24? Well, 24 would be 2 times 12. Well, how do you get 12? That's 2 times 6. Well, how do you get 6? That's 2 times 3 times x times x times x. So I'm just breaking it down. Now, what do they have in common? They both have 2 2's. They both have 3 x's, right? So 2 times 2 is 4. X times x times x is x cubed. That's what we're pulling out. Now, what we're doing is we're dividing it out. It's like we're undistributing it. Okay, so 4x to the 4th divided by 4x cubed. The 4 divided by 4 is 1. X to the 4th divided by x cubed is x. 1x. We just write x. 24 divided by 4 is 6. X cubed divided by x cubed is 1. We just say 6. 6 times 1 is 6. It is also what is left over here. There was an x left over, and over here there was a 2 and a 3 left over. But we're probably going to kind of get away with this as soon as we feel comfortable with writing that all down. Now, let's try some more examples. I want you to try these, okay? It's going to be kind of a mix of different problems. Okay, so this is going to be solve or factor. Okay, so you should recognize when it's appropriate to solve or not. So number one is going to be r. We're going to use other letters. R, parentheses, r minus 10 equals 0. Problem 2 is going to be x minus 8 squared equals 0. Problem 3 is going to be 3y cubed minus 9y squared. Problem 4 is going to be 6m squared plus 12m equals 0. Now, only the ones that have equal sign, equal to something, can be solved. So we're going to solve this one. We're going to solve this one. We're going to solve this one. We can't solve this one, so we're just going to factor this one, okay? And then some of them are already factored and some aren't. These are already factored, so we don't have to factor them. It's already done for us. But this one we're going to solve. Before we can solve, we got to factor it, which is what we were just practicing with the GCF. So go ahead and pause the video and see if you can try these. You can try the first one and watch me do the first one and then pause it and go on to the next one if you want to make sure you feel comfortable with it, or you can try them all and then watch and make sure you got it right. Okay, this one's already factored. So we set each factor equal to 0. This is called a factor and that's a factor. Now this one's already done. That's an answer. R equals 0 is an answer. This one we got to do one step of work. We need to add 10 to both sides and then get that answer. There we go. That one's done. Now this one's a little funny. X minus 8 squared is the same thing as x minus 8, x minus 8. And that's the way you should think of it. So there are two factors. They're just they were together. And we're going to do x minus 8 equals 0. And we're going to do x minus 8 equals 0. I'm going to add 8 to both sides. And we're going to get 8, right? And this one, isn't this one exactly the same? Aren't we going to just get the same answer? We are, and we don't need to list that same answer twice. There's one answer, x equals 8. So this is a rare case where you have two binomials, and we should get two answers, but we get one answer because we get two answers that are the same. Okay. Number 3, we can't solve it. All we can do is factor it. So we could, in our head, you guys should start getting to this point. You're like, well, what's the biggest number I can divide out of both of these? 3. What's the biggest number of y's I could divide out of both of these? Y squared. And then what would be left? Well, 3 divided by 3 is 1. Y cubed divided by y squared is y to the first. We just write y. Minus 9 divided by 3 is 3. Y squared divided by y squared is 1. We're not going to write it because there's already 3 here. 3 times 1 is 3. And then you'd be done. That's it. Now, of course, you could do what, I was showing you before, 3 times y times y times y. And then this is going to be 3 times 3 times y, right? And they both share 3. And they both share 2 y's, right? And so that would give you the 3y squared in front. And then what's left? A y and a 3. The minus has to show up. Okay? Next one. Has an equal 0. That means we could solve it, but it's got to be factored before we solve it. So we got to factor this. We got to look for the GCF. Okay, so start trying this to see if you could figure out here. What's the biggest number we could divide out of both of these cleanly? 6. What's the most m's we could divide out of both of these? M to the first, right? Parentheses, what would be left? 6m squared divided by 6m. Well, 6 divided by 6 is 1. M squared divided by m is m to the first. Plus 12 divided by 6 is 2. M divided by m is 1. We don't need to write it. We don't need to write the ones either. We usually don't, but that's what it means. Now it's factored. Okay, equal 0 should be down here. And now we can do 6m equals 0 and m plus 2 equals 0. And we could solve these, divide both sides by 6. M equals 0. 0 divided by anything is 0. Subtract 2 from both sides. M equals negative 2. So there you go. We are going to do the monitoring progress for this unit. I generally assign all the problems. It's going to start on page. Let me find it real quick. It's going to start on page 378, and we're going to do problems 1 through 10 all. There's a little blue button if you're doing it through the Student Dynamic ebook online, but you got to be zoomed out all the way. There's a little blue button that's at each of these questions, and it's a video showing you exactly how to do that problem, which is good when you're just trying to figure it out, because then the next thing you're going to do is you're going to do an assignment, and that one's not going to have a little video showing you exactly how to do it. And then you're going to take a quiz. So do your notes, upload them to Google Classroom, get credit.